Hey y'all. Hey. Hey y'all. How are you doing? It's me, Dolores, the pastor's daughter. And this today is another early day. Look, are y'all proud of me? Oh, there's my alert. Are y'all proud of me for coming on earlier? Say yes. I'm proud of me. Okay. I guess that's what matters right now, right? So, hey, how is your day going? Today is Monday, the 4th of April. And yeah, I decided to come on early because we have one more chapter to do in the Divorcing Your Parent book, which is the book that's illustrated right there on the left hand side. And it's actually not that long of a chapter, so I figured I would just come on earlier in the day and do it so that we can go ahead and complete the book. I don't even think we'll be on here. Um, I don't think we'll be on here for a whole hour unless we, start talking about something else. But as far as just reading this last chapter, we are doing good. Now, let me see if I want to go into the. No, I don't think I want to do that. We'll talk about that another time. But just finishing up the book, like I said, you guys, I feel really good about it. But I have felt that, that this book was, like I said, just fell straight from heaven. Like God put his stamp of approval on it and was like, this is the book. So, I have really enjoyed reading it. I've gotten so much clarity and insight. And honestly, I've learned to give myself a bit more grace, in some of the areas where I don't really feel like I gave myself grace. I feel like I kind of, was a little hard on myself about certain aspects of this divorce process. But, now I'm feeling better about it, because I'm hearing this coming from a therapist who not only did that herself, but she also helped other people to get through the process as well and then wrote about it. So, that's to me, that's the trifecta of a person who is living out, and someone who is whose steps are ordered, because um, to be able to go through a process yourself is one thing. To be able to help others go through the process is another thing. And then to write about it and to help people just for an infinite amount of time. Like I told you guys, when the author wrote this book, I was 10 years old. And what's ironic is that she, at the time, she had to divorce her mother, or she decided to divorce her mother. She was 41 years old, and here I am now, 41 years old, making this decision, as it relates to my father. And so I just really think that it's, that's something to make note of because, it speaks to our need as a people who have been through things to write about your experiences, to like pay that forward. Um, it's almost, to me, it's almost criminal behavior to experience something, to go through something, pull yourself out of it and never, kind of share that, at least share the experience, even if you don't write about it, pay it forward in the way that you share it, and you share your wisdom and your knowledge with, others. And so I just really, I feel great about this book, and I feel like I've been making really good progress, and I'm hoping that you guys have found value in it and that you're also making good progress, that you see that these practices can be used in, other relationships as well. It doesn't have to be divorcing a parent. It could be, divorcing a sibling. It could be divorcing a coworker. It could be divorcing a cousin. It could be, what I'm saying? It's just when you have toxic relationships in your life, um, a lot of times you find that those relationships are really hard to let go of because there's a stronghold there. That's part of the toxicity of it. And so sometimes it takes going through a more calculated, intentional effort to break those ties with with toxic people. And sometimes you have to go through these steps like this to make yourself realize, like, look, this is being around this person, having a relationship with this person, being emotionally invested in this person, um, you know, can leave me susceptible to further abuse, to, an unhealthy lifestyle, to sickness, to depression, to anxiety, to a lot of different things. And I think that we're, beginning to realize that in the world today is that, a lot of what we see that is really detrimental to our health revolves around our toxic relationships, and that I believe that we're beginning to realize that. Oh, hold on, you guys, I forgot to turn on water. But I think we are beginning to realize that regardless of the person's relationship to us, regardless of their connection to us, their closeness to us, or even the distance, because sometimes we've already created a physical distance, but we also need to cut off emotional ties. I think we're beginning to realize now how important it is for us to have healthy relationships with people and to end toxic relationships with people. At least I hope that a lot of us are getting to that place now, because like I said, I really feel like toxic relationships is the largest growing, the fastest growing health crisis out right now. I think a lot of people realize that when the pandemic happened, is that some of these relationships were extremely toxic. Some of these people put you in harm's way. Dealing with the pandemic, they were. For whatever reason, sometimes I found, at least, because the pandemic happened just after I left the church and cut off contact with my father. And so it kind of eased up a little bit for me, and I know that hasn't been the case for a lot of people. So, I don't want to be insensitive in that, but I'm really just speaking to my experience. But it eased up a lot of things for me because, it that provided an alibi to stay away from toxic people, because you're like, hey, we got a social distance, So it was like you were kind of able to use that as your way of creating that distance. And some of you realize now that you don't want to reestablish that connection with those people. It's like you realize that you could actually have more peace, that you could actually be well, less anxiety and less depression and less stress and all of that stuff. And I think that, a lot of people are now realizing how important it is to have healthy relationships and to cut toxic relationships. If you're still having some confusion, please go back and watch my videos. Reach out to me, okay? Because I can definitely make it clear to you. My email is right there at the bottom of the screen. And then you guys know that my paperback was just released 2 days ago on Saturday. Um, and so I want you to go get it, okay? Like, I really want you to go get this book. I believe it'll bless you. It'll bless me, to have other people, to read my story. I want to hear your feedback, your input. I'm definitely not one of those type of people who, you can't talk to, who you can't, share your opinion, even your criticisms, Um, like I'm open to those things, of course, respectfully, but yeah, so I'm just really anxious to have a good little dialogue with you guys about it. But without taking any more of your time, I want to go ahead and get into this chapter 8 of this book, which is the final chapter. So we are actually ending this book, which is great, right? But know that it's going to come back up because I'm going to do a recap of each of the chapters. Plus, I'm going to highlight how I have going through, going through the process of these same steps that the author highlights, Beverly Engel. And so, and then of course, you guys know that I've been talking about having a formal divorce proceeding, which will be coming up too. So I want you to just stay tuned with that. Go ahead and subscribe to my page, and then set it up so you can get the notifications. There's a little bell right there when you subscribe, and go ahead and do that. And select all so you can get notifications of anytime I post videos or anytime I go live. Because we're going to talk about this. We're going to really get into it. And I think that you guys will, that you'll really get involved. I think that you'll find yourself, getting invested in this story, because I think that you'll see that it applies to more than just me, that it applies across the board in a lot of areas and a lot of relationships. And so, yeah, so let's get into chapter 8. So this chapter is called New Beginnings and Happy Endings. Okay, so this is where we've reached a process where the author seems like she's, telling us that, hey, there is, light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, that you've gone through this dark time of, deciding and, coming to terms with what has happened to you. And you've done the work that is necessary, all the inner child work, working with other people in your family, working with deciding, if the criticisms that you're hearing are valid, and then how do you deal with that, all of that stuff. So now we're at the place where we're looking at the way ahead. And so the chapter starts like this. Happy endings come in all forms. Divorcing a parent can be a very positive thing, bringing new changes and new growth. It could be the most productive, loving thing you have ever done for yourself. This does not mean that it won't occasionally be difficult for you to weather the storms of life without your parent, or in some cases your entire family. And it doesn't mean that it won't be painful for you to celebrate the holidays without them. But overall, the pluses far outweigh the minuses for those whose relationships with their parents have become intolerable. I just want to give you guys just a quick welcome. Welcome to my channel, and I really appreciate a lot of my repeat watchers and subscribers and my followers, and I just really appreciate you all support. No, I don't always express that, but just always know that I feel your prayers and your encouragement, and I really appreciate them. Okay, so now I'll continue reading. New beginnings can take various forms. Divorcing a parent will undoubtedly cause you to change in some way. You may change your behavior, your values, your attitudes, or your way of living. You may suddenly be motivated to take a totally new course of action, or you may commit yourself more intensely to the course of action you have already chosen. It can be a turning point in your life or a step along your way to recovery. New beginnings. Just as sometimes happens when a parent dies, some people experience a life transition after divorcing a parent. Michelle, for example, told me, y'all, this is Michelle's story. There was a part of me that felt so relieved after the divorce. I experienced a newfound freedom. It was like a new beginning, permeating this. However, was the realization, permeating this, however, was the realization that now I had to grow up. I didn't have my mother to blame for all my problems anymore. This caused me to look at myself in an entirely different way. I started taking more responsibility for my own actions instead of constantly blaming others. I started looking at the way I have treated others in my life, and I was dismayed to realize how much I have hurt other people. I began to see how very much like my mother I turned out to be, even though it was the last thing I'd ever wanted to have happen. This caused me to begin to make some significant changes in my personality. Although it's taken time, I have made many of those changes, and I'm a much better person today because of them. Okay, so now she gets into Zev's story. She says Zev also made some significant changes after divorcing his parents. And this is what he had to say. Divorcing my parents caused me to hit bottom. They were all the family I had, so it felt like I had to start all over to create a new family for myself. Before the divorce, I was far too dependent on my family for everything: feedback, money, a sense of self. Now I rely on myself more, and I have created a whole new support system of caring, loving people. Then she gets into Megan's story here. Megan made a life-changing transformation when she divorced her mother. Excuse me. So this is what Megan had to say. Divorcing my mother was the best thing I ever did for myself. It gave me a whole new life, one that wasn't dictated by criticism, judgments, and someone else telling me what to do. It gave me the opportunity to find out what I could do once I got out from under her tyranny. Now when I think of my life, I see it in two distinct parts, which I call BD and AD, for before the divorce and after the divorce. That's how different my life is now. Yeah, not the BD and the AD though. Okay. Marjorie discovered that by divorcing her parents, she was able to break away from and stay away from other abusive people as well. See, we didn't even mention that part, that when you've surrounded yourself where you've come from, dysfunction, toxicity, you do have a tendency to surround yourself by more of it. So this is what Marjorie had to say. One of the main benefits of divorcing my parent is that if I hadn't done so, I would have always had I would have always had a person in my life that I was dependent on. When I made the statement to my parents that I wouldn't be treated like this, that I refused to be treated badly by them, it made it a lot easier to say this to others who were abusive to me. My parents' goal was to keep me incapacitated. They were invested in making me feel ineffectual. I knew I could always rely on my father to do the maintenance on my car, to fix things when they were broken, to make my decisions for me. After I divorced my parents, I discovered that I could make it financially without them and that I could handle my own life responsibly. I discovered that these bargains that you make with your parents aren't really bargains at all. It may seem like a good idea to always know that you'll be taken care of by your parents, but it's not worth it. The whole premise is that you're not able to take care of yourself. Now I feel a tremendous satisfaction in realizing that I am not incompetent. I can do it myself, whatever it is. Letting go of my parents taught me that there isn't going to be anyone else to bail me out. I had to let go of my fantasy that someone was always going to rescue me. Wow. That's really interesting. That is really interesting because like I said, we don't really talk about, that, like, the dependency that some of these toxic people can create, to make you dependent on them so that you don't go anywhere. You feel like, okay, well, who's going to do this for me if I leave them? Who's going to be there if who's going to give me advice? Who's going to take care of my car? Who's going to cut my grass? Who's going to comfort me? Who's going to tell me everything's okay? And it just, sometimes it's just it turns into a handicap, a crutch. And with toxic people, they do these things gladly because they know that it makes you dependent on them. And so you have to take that power back and that control of your own life and give yourself all of those things that you were expecting or dependent on from a toxic person. Okay, so I'm going to continue reading. Surviving a divorce can give you the courage and strength to tackle other problem areas of your life, as Patricia was able to do. So here's what Patricia said. After I divorced my father, I realized that I now had the courage to also divorce my husband, who was, in fact, very much like my father. I had been unhappy for a long time in the marriage, but had hung on, just as I had with my father, hoping against hope that someday he would change and would appreciate me. In the process of readying myself for divorcing my father, I guess I was unconsciously doing the same with my husband. It was surprising how easy it actually was to divorce my husband, who had been neglectful and cold, once I realized he would never change and that I deserved much, much more. Some adult children find that divorce from their parent actually strengthens their marriage, which is exactly what happened to Fran. That's what I found too. It's actually like really strengthened mine. I would say that like for me, it was a factor with my previous divorces, and it was like I think I was divorcing them. Not that they were good relationships that I needed to be in, because they weren't, which is why I divorced. But also, I think subconsciously I was really needing to and subconsciously divorcing my father. And so now I find myself in this position where it's like, I realize now that that is what was necessary. That's what's necessary now in order to continue having a successful, healthy relationship with my husband now. So this is what Fran had to say about how it strengthened her marriage. Robert was so incredibly supportive of me throughout it all. I was really surprised because I had never experienced him that way. But he knew what I had been through with my parents, and he believed I was doing the right thing. He helped see me through the ordeal of having to mourn both of my parents at the same time. He held me and encouraged me to cry, never making me feel bad for carrying on, as my parents had always done when I was hurting. I felt completely accepted and loved by him, and it felt wonderful. We're closer than ever now. I feel the same way, you guys. I feel the exact same way. My husband has been very, very supportive, and it has definitely strengthened our relationship. But see, the opposite can be true. So this is what it reads now. The opposite can also be true. In some cases, the divorce of a parent can lead to the breakup of a relationship, as it did in Frank's case. Okay, so this is what happened to Frank. I realized that Mia couldn't be depended on in times of need. Here I was, devastated at my loss, and she just kept saying that I would get over it soon. She became bored with me because I wasn't fun any more fun. Excuse me, I wasn't any fun anymore. She didn't seem to understand what I was going through, and she didn't seem to want to understand it. She just wanted me to get over it so we could go out and do things again. I'm glad I saw this side of her when I did, not after getting married. So this happened when he was still in a dating phase, and wow. So he saw how non-supportive she was going to be, and if she's not supportive about that, that's a major thing. Then how can he really depend on her to be supportive in other areas? So that makes a lot of sense. Okay, I'll continue reading. New beginnings can also occur in your career when you divorce a parent. 9 months after divorcing her father, Celeste was able to quit a job that had been making her very unhappy. For 10 years, she had endured a boss who was critical, domineering, and controlling as her father. And this is what she said. It didn't even dawn on me that I didn't deserve this kind of treatment. I was so used to being criticized by my father that I put up with the same kind of treatment from my boss. It wasn't until I had the courage to divorce my father and had experienced what life was like without his constant berating, that I became strong enough to quit my job. Wow. And see, that's what I've been trying to tell you guys. This whole process is not even meant to be, it's not meant to be divisive. And sometimes we have to realize that we have to cut ties with the toxic person for the greater good, not only for our own good, but for the good of our other relationships and our in other areas of our lives. Okay, so this next part is called happy endings. And it reads like this. Deep inside, most adult children who have divorced their parents have a secret dream of getting back together and working things out. Even though they knew at the time that divorce was the healthiest choice they could make, after some time apart, many adult children know they still love their parent and long for a reconciliation. Peter's story had a happy ending. Okay, so this is what Peter said. I felt very good about the fact that I was able to divorce my father. I didn't do it to punish him or to manipulate him, but to make a strong statement to him that I could not tolerate his current behavior. I didn't speak to him for over 3 years. A lot happened to me in those 3 years. Because I wasn't around and his abusiveness, and because of therapy, my self esteem improved greatly. I married a wonderful woman and have 2 children. I am a very successful photographer with my own business. I felt good about myself in my life, and I wanted to share some of it with my dad it, if he wasn't still abusive. I wanted him to meet my wife and kids, and I guess there was also a part of me that wanted him to see that I was successful and had turned out well. Not because of him, but in spite of him. We've been in touch again for some time. I can't tell you it's all been a bed of roses, because it hasn't. From time to time, his abusive nature rears its ugly head. But I'm so strong now that I just don't allow it. When he starts to put me down or starts to tell me what to do, I just disengage from him for a while, and he gets the message. I guess those 3 years apart had a stronger impact on him than I ever imagined they would. That's good. It's interesting though, like to point out in this story that, that abusive nature, because he called it an abusive nature, was, is something that is like still there below the surface. And you have to decide if you can deal with that. Now, this is Peter, a man, dealing with another man. And so that might be something that he decided, that he can do. But if you're dealing with a violent, dangerous person, and if there's a male female dynamic there where, you're the weaker, then you may not need to engage with that person. You may not need to reconcile or get back in their same space or anything like that. Um, so you just have to really use your good judgment there, but know that this is their nature, which is why you are at this point. Because if it wasn't in their nature, you would not have had to get to a point where you're divorcing them. So you have to realize that that is part of who they are, and even when you reconcile, it's that part of who they are is still there. Okay. So it says here, like Peter, some adult children discover that being away from their parent has made them much healthier and stronger. So much so that they find they can now take much better care of themselves when they are with the parent. Tanya gave her relationship with her parents one more try. Okay, this is what Tanya said. She said, I am no longer a child around my parents. It took it took not being around them for 4 years before I could say that. But I'm finally able to hold my own with them. I no longer feel afraid of them, of what they might say or do to hurt me. I no longer feel like their victim, but like their equal. I can stand toe to toe with them and stand up for my rights. I know I couldn't have done it before because I was just too dependent on them. I had to prove myself that I could make it without I had to prove to myself that I could make it without them. Now I can even make it with them. Aw, y'all, that's a good story. I like that. Okay. As time passes and as old wounds heal, it is natural to feel more forgiving of even the cruelest parents and to miss even the most unlovable ones. Harriet, who hadn't seen or heard from either of her parents in over 8 years, certainly found this to be true. Okay, this is Harriet's story, y'all. This is a long story, okay? So let's get into it. Okay. Even though I don't regret divorcing them, I found that the more time went by, the more I was able to forgive them for the way they had treated me. And as more time passed, I also found that I missed them in my life. I decided to see them one more time to determine whether they had changed at all and whether we could get along any better. I realized that since so much time had passed, I had probably forgotten how cruel they could be and how terrible I felt around them, and that there was a risk that out of missing them, I had probably emphasized their positive qualities in my mind. But I had to find out. I saw my reconciliation attempt as giving me a chance to see the truth, whatever it might be. I was pleasantly surprised by their response when I called. My mother sounded elated and called out to my father, Harriet's on the phone. Harriet's on the phone. Much to my surprise, he got on the phone immediately and said hello. There was no hesitation in his voice and none of the old bitterness. We agreed to get together the next Sunday. I was very nervous as I got ready to see them. The long car drive gave me plenty of time to review in my mind my life with them and the years of being apart. I hadn't forgotten their cruelty, but I realized that I wasn't as afraid of them now. I felt more confident that I could defend myself against any potential cruelty I might encounter from them. When my mother opened the door, she looked so happy to see me it made me cry. We hugged each other immediately, and it felt so good to feel her warmth. I noticed my dad in the background, looking uncomfortable and rather shy, very unlike what I had anticipated he'd be like. I remembered him as an imposing figure, always angry and gruff. 8 years had aged him tremendously. He didn't look threatening now at all. I approached him and stuck out my hand. He looked very nervous, but he tentatively he tentatively took my hand for just a second or two. I looked him straight in the eye and I noticed that he couldn't look at me the same way. He looked ashamed, but I caught his eye just for a moment. For just that one moment, our eyes locked and we made contact. It felt good. I realized that he had not looked at me in the eye since he first began sexually molesting me. I have forgiven him for betraying me, and now with just one look, it seemed that he knew it. While the three of us talked that afternoon, I realized that in the years that we'd been apart, I had grown up. I was no longer afraid of them. I talked to them as their equal, not as a frightening little child. It also became evident that they had had plenty of time to realize just how much they had damaged me. My mother cried often, telling me how much she had missed me and how she regretted so many things. Most especially the fact that she had not believed me when I told her my father had molested me. But she also told me that she had finally been able to confront him about the accusation and that he had admitted to her that he had indeed abused me. I looked over at him. He nodded his head and said, "Yes, I told her the truth. I did molest you, and I am sorry. I'm sorry I didn't admit it much earlier." Wow. What do y'all think about that? I hope that that was like healing for her, but ooh, I don't know, you guys. I don't know. Okay, I'll continue reading. Um, It is not necessary for you to forgive your parents in order to reconcile with them. You may not be ready or able to forgive by the time you are ready to attempt a reconciliation. Perhaps during the reconciliation process itself, you may obtain enough trust and healing to be able to forgive, or you may never be able to forgive them. You may be asking, how can this be? If I don't forgive, how can I possibly reconcile? There are several ways this can happen. First of all, if you can really accept the fact that everyone is both good and bad, it is possible to love others for their good qualities in spite of what they have done to hurt you. Some people find that they can forgive the person even though they cannot forgive the act. Now that's interesting. That's an interesting take on it. And I would say that that's something that we never never have talked about in church. We don't talk about these this way of thinking and this the level of hurt and damage that has been done that leaves people in a place of where they can't forgive. And it's like, well, what's the option for them? It's almost as if you're just kind of excommunicated from a community because you can't forgive. And it's just like, well, you're thinking to yourself, well, wait, I haven't even had time. I haven't processed this, or the act was so egregious that, like, how can I forgive? And why is that something that I have to do in order to still be part of this community when something has been done to me? It's just, it's a lot, to process. But let me continue reading. You are the only one who can decide about forgiveness or reconciliation in your own case. You are the only one who will know whether the time is right. Trust your instincts. Follow your heart. And do not allow circumstances or people to pressure you into a decision prematurely. Even if they don't believe there can be a complete reconciliation, many adult children want to see the divorced parent again before he dies. Philip, who was gay, recounted the following to his support group after he had been to see his father. Okay, this is what Philip said. Our meeting was very strained, and it was obvious that we were still very uncomfortable with each other. But I could see that he had missed me, and I realized I had missed him too. I am sure he has never fully accepted my lifestyle, but he did have the courtesy to ask me about my life, how things were going, and he seemed genuinely interested. It wasn't fake. I feel good that I went to see him because it turned out to be our last time together before he died. I felt good to know that some of the hurt and animosity between us had subsided. I felt more able to go on with my life with fewer regrets and a stronger sense of pride. Aww. Don't you guys love. Sorry, y'all. Don't you guys love a nice little, like, happy ending story like that? And I mean, I know it's not happy, because of all the things that have happened, but it's as happy as, it can be. And I think that we probably should find a little bit of comfort in that, that it doesn't have to end all bad, like there is a I don't know, there's just like a happy ending, I guess. Okay, let me continue reading. Before attempting to reconcile, ask yourself the following questions. Okay, so these are 5 questions you need to ask yourself before attempting to reconcile. Okay, number 1, are you being pressured into reconciliation? For example, by illness, by family wishes, religious beliefs, or guilt. Okay, are you being pressured into reconciliation? Number 2, do you feel strong enough to defend yourself and to maintain your own separate identity? Number 3, has your parent shown some signs of being willing to change? Is she willing to go into therapy with you or separately? Is she willing to work out a new relationship? Number 4, has enough time lapsed to enable both of you to look at the reasons for the divorce, to see how each of you has changed, and to recognize how you really feel about each other now? Number 5, is your parent ready to reconcile with you? Or is he still angry with you for blaming him, for being angry with him, for not having seen him for a while, or for divorcing him? He may need more time to heal and to forgive, no matter how forgiving you might feel. Now, see, that's all interesting too. That's very interesting, especially like these last two, number 4 and number 5. It's like has actually all of them, but and even number 3, has your parents shown some signs of being willing to change? You know, um, has enough time gone by? Because sometimes we just don't even give things enough time. You know, time can be very healing, and so have we given it that much? As much as it requires or as much as we need? Is your parent ready to reconcile with you? I mean, that's a really good question because, you have to think about that other person. They may not be interested in reconciling with you, even though you want to. You may have a parent who is still very angry and who's not going to forgive you for divorcing them, or for having your own feelings and, being angry with them. Um, so these are very good questions to ask yourself. I think this is great. Okay, I'll continue reading here. If you decide to attempt a reconciliation, make sure that you can take care of yourself both emotionally and physically, and that you will be able to retain your sense of self when you are with your parent. It is also important to realize that the only way a reconciliation can work is if both parties have undergone some significant change. If this is not the case, old patterns of behaving and coping are bound to reappear. The following suggestions can help you to make the most of your reconciliation efforts. Okay, so here she says, be realistic. Do not expect it to be easy. Have reasonable expectations of the relationship instead of expecting everything to be different and wonderful. Otherwise, you will be disappointed and may give up before you have really started. Another suggestion: make sure you have a plan of action. Do not expect things to just work out without effort on both of your parts, right? If you have no plan, you will find that you will fall back into old behavior patterns and negative ways of communicating. And so here are a few other suggestions. He says, set aside regular time for family meetings, a time to hash out some of the problems instead of letting them build up. And then actively work on learning to communicate effectively with each other. Ask your parent to go into therapy with you to work out some of the problems and to improve communications. Read books on effective communication skills. And then another suggestion here is to make a mutual agreement. As with all reconciliations, it is necessary for you and your parent to make a mutual agreement to bury the hatchet and go on. This means that you must call a ceasefire and work together toward establishing a peace treaty. Your agreement might include the following joint commitments. And here's one commitment. You will not continue to fight or be verbally abusive to each other. You will talk things out, look for solutions, and seek outside help when needed. Another suggestion, or another commitment. We agree to listen to each other. This may mean that you must take turns talking while the other listens, making no comments. Another agreement. We agree to stop blaming each other. It is okay to express anger, but we will confine our statements to I statements, such as, I feel angry with you, because it sounds as though you don't completely believe what I'm telling you. Instead of, you still don't believe me, you're calling me a liar. So that, you know what, and that's a really good suggestion, you guys, because people say it all the time. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. And of course it is sometimes what you say and how you say it. If, just changing a few words around, saying things in a different way can make a huge difference on how that person receives it and the effectiveness of the communication experience. Another agreement can be, we would try to explain why we are angry instead of just flying off the handle. Okay, these are all good suggestions, good agreements to have. You may not be ready for a ceasefire if your anger is still so intense that all you want to do is rage at your parent. The same is true for your parent. If either or both of you cannot get past the anger long enough to make some agreements, then the time is not right for reconciliation. Perhaps more time needs to be spent apart, with each of you releasing your anger in constructive ways or working on your problems in therapy. If you and your parent decide to begin seeing each other again, make sure you take it slow and easy. You've been out of each other's lives for a while now, and it's likely that you've both changed in the process. Your parent hasn't been the center of your world, and you haven't been the center of his. You have new people in your life, new interests, and so on. Following um, the following are some suggestions on how to ease back into each other's lives. Okay, so here are some suggestions she has for easing back in. Okay, see each other less often than you used to. See each other for shorter periods of time. If you are still somewhat afraid of your parent, try seeing him only when there are others present. Work on communicating your needs much better, such as saying no when you do not want to do something. Work hard to not Work hard at not slipping into old patterns of letting your parent control you or of trying to change your parent. So those are what she suggests there. Even with all the positive changes that can come with divorcing a parent, many adult children don't consider the process complete unless they are able to successfully reconcile. Some who try are pleased with the results, finding that since they have become stronger and more mature, they are now able to have a relationship with their parent that is far healthier than ever before. On the other hand, some attempts to reconcile simply reinforce the adult child's resolve to remain estranged from the parent. It is sometimes necessary to try a reconciliation in order to quiet the incessant doubting and internal questioning. Attempts that do not work out should never be seen as failures. After all, you can control only your end of any relationship. Although you may want a reconciliation with all your heart, your parent may not be willing or able to reciprocate. It is self-defeating to carry around a deep longing for the day when your relationship with your parent will magically transform, if all evidence points to the contrary. Saying your final goodbye can be the ultimate in happy endings. As wise philosophers have said, we must discard the old, unneeded baggage of our lives to make room for the new. By leaving a void in our lives, we are providing space for good things to enter. And this is the last paragraph of this book of chapter 8. Divorcing a parent is not about hate. It is about love. It is about loving yourself. Uh-oh. Yeah, my auto just shut down. My phone just shut down. Sorry about that. Okay, let me continue. Divorcing a parent is not about hate. It is about love. It is about loving yourself enough to give yourself the gift of freedom. Freedom from the tyranny or deprivation of your childhood. Freedom from the guilt and shame of never having felt that you were enough. And giving yourself the freedom to become yourself and accept yourself just the way you are. Divorcing a parent is about loving your parent, loving her even though you must love yourself more, and even though you have to let go. It is feeling the pain of losing someone you love, but all the while loving yourself for your strength, courage, and determination, and for your will to live a happy and productive life in spite of all your obstacles. Yeah. Tell me that was not a good book. Like that, this book was good. Okay? This book was good beginning to end, honey. I just want to say thank you to Beverly Engel for this. Like, this is amazing. And thank you to everybody who shares their stories and, you know, to empower others. I wonder if we should read these appendix. I feel like I should. And then that way we really be done with the book. Let me do it. Let me see. It looks like it's about it looks like it's a few pages actually. And now I'm gonna read this another time because I think it probably deserves its own. Yeah, I feel like it deserves its own shine. So I think that I'll probably end this stream here, and then maybe just start another one with the appendix. It's 3 of them. Remember I told you guys that. But in the one she wrote to the divorced parent, right? Which I think was great too, you know. And then the second one is to mates, friends, and other loved ones, you know. And then the last one is to therapists. So, yeah. I definitely think I need to read that too because I think that's going to give you guys a lot. Like, that's going to be valuable too. So, I need to do that. But anyway, so like I was saying, you guys, that is the end of that chapter of actual all the chapters. And then we have just the appendix section and then the sources in the index. She has an index section too. Ooh, Lord. Lord. Let me see. This is good. She even has an index in here, y'all. Y'all might need to go get this book in case you need to refer back to it. I don't know. Let me know if y'all need to go, if y'all end up getting this book. But I think it's just really good. And I just thank God for that. I thank God for her. And I thank her for, for doing this, for writing this book all those years ago, and then putting it back in print in 2014. I think that was divine. But anyway, so like that's the end of it. So what you'll see from me moving forward is some things that we were talking about, and I believe it was chapter 7, and that was saying those things that needed to be said. We talked about that, I want to say, from in chapters 5, 6, and 7. um but definitely in chapter 7, when it talks about actually saying those things. And I think that that's what I've been missing in my process, is that the last conversation I had with my father was him talking to me, talking at me. And that's what you guys will see in the book, in my book Provokes, is that our it's based on our last conversation with each other. And you will see how um my father used these manipulation tactics, and basically what he did was really not even give me the space or opportunity to speak, nor did he really care about what I had to say, to be honest with you, which is why he didn't do it. He knew what the issues were, and his mission was to get me back under his control. And so he wasn't interested in what I had to say. Therefore, I didn't really even say anything. And that's what you guys will see in the book, is that I couldn't say anything. It's like, what do you say to a person who is highly toxic, who would take everything you say and try to twist it, maybe try to start an argument, make you seem like you're disrespectful, dishonorable to them, or that you're not saved, that, you know what I'm saying? Like you're going to go to hell for, standing up for yourself. And those are all the things that I got from my father. So I didn't really even have the space or the opportunity to really share my thoughts and my feelings, and um, to really just confront him. And so I think that that's, the where I feel like I need to go next. I feel like that is the closure that I need. And I can see how the author was saying the same thing, is that I need to actually say all of those things. It's one thing to put things in a book, but when you actually can say it in your own voice, um, that it makes a difference. And I believe that that's a step that I need to take now. And so, and just like how I've been doing everything else, I'm going to do this out loud. You guys will see this process. When I confront my father, I'm going to do it in video form on my channel, on all of my channels. Okay. Um, and I'm going to, express all of the things. And I don't know how long this process is going to take, but I've started writing down all of the things that I want to talk about. And it's going to be quite a few videos, you guys. It's going to be quite a few. It's not going to be a bunch of long live streams. I'm going to shorten them so that they're easier to digest. I don't want any of my message getting lost in a long live stream, because I know you guys have short attention spans, okay? And y'all aren't going to sit here and watch a long live stream. But I need you to also hear my story, because I believe that that's what's really going to empower a lot of us to do the same thing. Once you see me do it, then you'll realize that you can too. And I think that that's the ultimate message in this. And so that's what you'll see from me moving forward. I don't want you to be alarmed, okay? But I know that that's the logical next step. I've even spoken to a spiritual advisor about it, and spoken to my husband about it, and all of that. Um, and I feel like this is the logical next step for me in my healing journey, and in you guys witnessing this process, and in me divorcing my father. Okay. So I love you guys. I do. Okay. I say it all the time, and I show you by my actions that I love you and I care for you. And just know that this is a safe space for you. That I am doing the very work that I know that you guys will eventually have to do. You see me doing it, and you know that it's possible. Okay. You know that you have the strength to do the same thing. You can end toxic relationships. You got to do it. You got to do it. I know it's going to be hard. Okay. I know it's going to be hard. You can see how hard it has been on me, right? But you also can see how I am thriving because of it, right? Like you can see that I'm looking better, that my skin is better, that my attitude is better, that I'm not as angry, right? That even the clarity that I have when I speak to you guys about my experience has changed. You can see that. And so you know that those very things, that all of the good things that are going to come from making these hard decisions, they'll happen for you too. And it's just like a greater good thing. Somebody is going to feel slighted in the process, but it shouldn't be you. You shouldn't be the one to continue being slighted in this process. It's time for you to start loving you and caring for you and doing what is best for you. You deserve to be healthy. And the people who love you and who you love, who are still in your life, they deserve a healthy you too. And so that's the goal, to be our healthiest, best selves. Okay. So y'all get in the comments. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you're working through the process. If any of this is resonating with you, I know, again, you guys, a lot of you don't feel comfortable yet, um, reaching out in that way. So, reaching out in a public way like this. So send me an email. That's my email right at the bottom of the screen. Just send me an email. Just write out your thoughts. Send me a voice message. If that's what you have to do. If you have to just talk it out, you can't write it out. That's fine too. Do what you need to do. Okay? Do what you need to do to heal, to be healthy. Okay? All right, you guys. You are important to me. I need you to survive. I love you. Bye bye for now.